My name is Lauren Mercer, and I was 34 when I walked into my brother's fundraiser and saw my name printed across a 12-foot banner. EVANS Road to Transplant. Thank you, Lauren, for giving the gift of life. Nearly 100 people were standing beneath it in the fellowship hall of my parents' church. There were coworkers, cousins, neighbors, and people I had never met holding paper plates and bidding on donated gift baskets. My mother stood beside a microphone with one hand pressed to her heart. A mother should never have to choose between her children, she said. But thankfully, Lauren made the choice for us. She is giving Evan one of her kidneys. The room erupted in applause. My brother's 2 children ran toward me, phones lifted. Someone called me a hero, but I had never called the transplant center. I had never completed a health questionnaire. I had never agreed to be tested. I looked at Evan because I still believed, for one foolish second, that he would correct her. He met my eyes, kept smiling for the cameras, and whispered, "Just smile. We can talk after people leave." That was when I understood. My family had not misunderstood me. They had created a room where saying no would make me look responsible if my brother died. What they did not know was that every public promise they had made had also created a record. Before I tell you what happened when that record reached the transplant hospital, let me ask you something. If your family announced a life-changing sacrifice in your name before you had agreed, would you correct them in front of everyone, or wait until you understood exactly what they had done? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe to Hush and Tell Stories if you believe love should never require surrendering your right to choose. To understand why I did not grab that microphone, you need to understand how decisions worked in the Mercer family. My younger brother, Evan, was never cruel when we were children. He did not have to be. My parents built the world around him so carefully that he rarely saw what it cost anyone else. When I was 19, I earned admission to a construction management program in Cincinnati. My father had spent years telling me that if I worked hard and kept my grades up, my parents would cover what scholarships did not. I remember opening the financial aid letter at our kitchen table. There was a gap of $11,400 for the first year, but my parents had saved enough to cover it. Or so I thought. My mother, Diane, folded the letter back along its crease and told me they had used most of the college account to rescue Evan's landscaping business. He was 22, had bought equipment on credit, and had lost 2 commercial contracts in the same month. "He could lose everything before he has even begun," she said. I stared at her. That was my college money. My father, Robert, did not look up from his coffee. "You can recover from taking loans. Your brother may never recover from failing this young." It was not the money alone that stayed with me. It was how naturally they described my setback as survivable and his as catastrophic. I took the loans. I worked evening shifts at a building supply store. I graduated 1 semester late and never asked them for tuition again. Evan's business still failed the following spring. My parents called that bad luck. My delayed graduation became evidence that I had always been independent. Years later, when my marriage ended, I asked my parents to keep my son for 1 weekend while I moved out of the house I had shared with my ex-husband. Caleb was 4. I had packed half our life into boxes while trying to explain why his father would no longer be at breakfast every morning. My mother said they could not help because Evan and his wife, Rachel, had planned an anniversary trip, and the grandchildren needed to stay with them. "They have 2 children, Lauren," she reminded me. "You only have Caleb. Surely 1 child is manageable." So Caleb sat on a folded blanket in the corner of an empty apartment while I carried boxes up 2 flights of stairs. He colored a picture of our new home on the back of a utility envelope. That night, we ate pizza on the floor because I had not found the plates. Those memories were different wounds. The first taught me that my future could be spent to protect Evan from failure. The second taught me that even my hardest days would be measured against whatever he needed. I had spent years telling myself those were old injuries. Then Evan became sick, and every rule of our family returned with medical language wrapped around it. Evan was 31 when a routine appointment led to more blood work, then a nephrology referral, then a diagnosis of IgA nephropathy. By the time the doctors caught it, his kidneys had already been badly damaged. Medication slowed the decline, but it did not stop it. Within a year, he began dialysis. There was nothing imaginary about his illness. Dialysis left him pale, nauseated, and so tired that climbing the steps to his front porch could require a pause. Rachel worked as an assistant manager at a grocery store and could not always leave for appointments. Their daughter, Sophie, was 9, and their son, Miles, was 6. I helped because I loved all 4 of them. On Tuesday afternoons, I often collected Evan from the dialysis center after leaving a job site. My hard hat rolled around in the trunk beside Caleb's backpack. Caleb completed math worksheets in the back seat while Evan leaned his head against the passenger window and tried not to be sick. I brought casseroles that Rachel could reheat. I watched Sophie and Miles when schedules overlapped. Because I work as a commercial construction estimator, I am comfortable with numbers and complicated paperwork, so I created a spreadsheet for their medical bills. I called one billing office twice to correct a duplicate charge of $3,800. One afternoon, as I drove him home through freezing rain, Evan said, "You're the only person I don't have to pretend with." I reached over and turned down the heater because the warmth made his nausea worse. "You don't have to pretend with Rachel." She looks at me and sees every possible ending. "You just handle the next thing." I took that as gratitude. Later, I realized it was also how Evan had learned to see me. I was the person who handled the next thing, regardless of what handling it cost. The first mention of donation happened at my parents' kitchen table. My mother had invited us for Sunday lunch. Evan was not there. He had been too tired after dialysis the previous day. While Caleb played in the living room, Diane asked my blood type. "O positive," I said. "Why?" She tried to make her voice casual. O can donate to O, can't it? Blood type is only one part of compatibility. Her eyes sharpened. "So you have researched it." I read the information Evan gave everyone. "That doesn't mean I have decided to be tested." My father set down his fork. "Nobody is demanding an answer today." I looked from him to my mother. "Good, because I don't have one. Major surgery would affect my work in Caleb. I don't even know whether I would qualify." Diane pressed her napkin flat against the table. "Of course, we are only talking." A week later, she arrived at my townhouse carrying a yellow legal pad. She had written headings for insurance, paid leave, recovery help, and childcare. She asked for my health insurance information, claiming the family needed to understand which expenses might be covered. I closed my laptop and pushed the pad back toward her. If I ever decide to speak with the donor team, that conversation will be private. They will explain the financial process. You do not need my policy number. "Nobody is scheduling surgery," she said. "I'm trying to keep this family from being surprised by paperwork." Then write down that I have not volunteered. She capped her pen with a hard click. "You always make ordinary conversations sound like legal disputes." Only when someone starts collecting my information before I have said yes. She took the pad and left. I believed I had been unmistakably clear. The fundraiser was held 8 days later. Rachel told me it was for dialysis expenses, transportation, missed work, and the growing balance from medications. I helped price 2 silent auction packages and persuaded a concrete supplier I worked with to donate 4 tickets to a Columbus Blue Jackets game. I did not attend the planning meetings because I was preparing a bid for a $9 million elementary school renovation. When I arrived at the church that Saturday, Caleb was holding my hand. He saw the banner before I did. "Mom, that's your name." I followed his finger. For a moment, the words did not form a sentence. Then the microphone squealed, and my mother called everyone to attention. After her announcement, Sophie wrapped both arms around my waist. "Daddy said you might save him." Miles pressed his face into my coat. A woman from my mother's Bible group filmed us from 3 feet away. I could hear people saying, "Look at those children," and "What an incredible sister." I looked at Evan. His whispered instruction to smile told me everything I needed to know. I did not smile. I also did not push his children away or humiliate them in a room full of strangers. I put one arm around Sophie and one around Miles and said, clearly enough for the closest phones to capture it, "Your dad has a very good medical team, and there are many steps before anyone can know what comes next." My mother's expression tightened, but the applause continued around us. For the next hour, people approached me with questions I could not answer. When was the surgery? How long would I be off work? Was I frightened? One man told Caleb he should be proud to share his mother with his uncle. Caleb looked at me as if there were an answer printed somewhere on my face. I stayed until the auction closed because leaving with my son while Evan's children watched would have created the scene my family could use against me. But I photographed the banner. I saved the fundraiser page on my phone. I noticed the description included the phrase, "Upcoming living donor transplant." I also saw the total climb past $25,000. When most guests had left, I found my parents and Evan beneath the banner. My mother was removing the batteries from the microphone. "Take that down," I said. Diane placed the batteries in a plastic box. "The event is over." "I mean the claim. You are going to correct it tonight." My father crossed his arms. "Lower your voice. Volunteers are still cleaning." "You announced that I am giving away an organ I have never agreed to be tested for." Evan rubbed at the tape on his wrist from dialysis. "No one said surgery was scheduled." I pointed at the banner. "That does not say I might be evaluated. It thanks me for giving the gift of life." My mother finally looked at me. "You are O-positive. Siblings are often good matches. We did not invent something impossible." Possible is not promised. Sometimes people need to hear themselves called brave before they stop acting afraid, she said. Tonight showed you how many people support you. The calmness of her answer frightened me more than shouting would have. You think applause can replace consent. I think your brother is dying while you examine every inconvenience. My son is not an inconvenience. My job is not an inconvenience. My health is not an inconvenience. Robert stepped between us. You can live with one kidney. Your brother cannot live without one. You do not know whether I can donate at all. Then get tested, Evan said. That is all anyone is asking. No, you announced the answer first, and now you are calling the process a small request. He looked toward the volunteers stacking chairs. Please, Lauren, I had a good night for the first time in months. Don't turn it into something ugly. I stared at him. I did not bring the lie into this room. I took Caleb's hand and left. Behind us, the banner remained hanging from 2 hooks. By Sunday morning, my phone contained 43 messages. Cousins called me heroic. A woman I barely remembered from high school asked whether she could organize meals during my recovery. One aunt wrote that God had given our family an answer. Then my mother posted 12 photographs from the fundraiser. Her caption began, "We are overwhelmed by the love surrounding Evan and his confirmed donor, his sister Lauren." In one photograph, Sophie and Miles were holding me beneath the banner. Caleb stood at the edge of the frame, looking confused. I called Diane. Change the caption. Good morning to you too. I am not his confirmed donor. People understand what I mean. No, they do not. 43 people have contacted me as if surgery is scheduled. Then perhaps it is time to call the hospital instead of counting messages. Remove my name. She sighed. I am not erasing the most hopeful thing that has happened to this family because you woke up anxious. I saved screenshots before she could block me from seeing the post. Then I wrote one public comment. For accuracy, I have not volunteered, begun donor evaluation, or been tested. No transplant involving me is scheduled. She deleted it within 6 minutes. That deletion was the first small act that changed how I responded. Until then, part of me had still been trying to persuade my mother to recognize the truth. When she removed my correction while keeping the lie, I understood that accuracy was not her goal. Pressure was. On Monday afternoon, my supervisor, Marisol Grant, asked me to step into the conference room. She closed the door and turned a printed email toward me. It was from a facilities director whose company had attended the fundraiser. He had congratulated our firm on supporting me through the upcoming transplant and asked whether I would still lead the school renovation estimate. "I am not asking about your health," Marisol said. "I am asking whether someone promised our client you would disappear from a $9 million project." Heat rose into my face. My family announced I was donating a kidney. I never agreed to be tested. Marisol read the email again, then looked at me. "Do you need legal counsel?" "I don't know yet." "Do you need me to remove you from the bid?" "No, I need you not to make decisions based on an event that does not exist." She nodded, then put that in an email to me. "I will tell the client there is no approved leave and no staffing change. Nothing more." I had expected embarrassment or suspicion. Her professional restraint nearly made me cry. She did not ask whether I would save my brother. She asked what was true and what action I wanted taken. E-client requested a video call that afternoon. I joined from Marisol's office with the estimate schedule open in front of me. The facilities director, Mr. Keating, looked deeply uncomfortable. "Lauren, I hope my email did not intrude on something private," he said. "Diane told my wife the operation would probably happen before bids were due. I thought your company already knew." That detail landed harder than the original email. My mother had not merely accepted congratulations. She had given strangers a timeline for my surgery. "There is no operation," I said. "I have not entered donor evaluation, and my availability on this project has not changed." Mr. Keating adjusted his glasses. "Understood. For what it is worth, I contributed because Evan's dialysis expenses were real." The transplant story made the need sound more immediate, but I would not withdraw help from his children. "I appreciate that. I only need decisions about this bid to be based on accurate information." Within minutes, the conversation returned to roofing allowances and asbestos surveys. That ordinary shift mattered. My family had turned me into a symbol on a banner. At work, I was still the person trusted to finish the bid. That evening, I drafted a 2-sentence statement and sent it to her. Then, I added the client's email to the folder where I had saved my mother's post and the fundraiser screenshots. The pressure did not arrive as one dramatic attack. It came through ordinary channels until there was nowhere in my life untouched by the announcement. My Aunt Patris left a voicemail saying she had always known I would do the right thing. My cousin offered to start a meal calendar. A church member sent Caleb a card that called him the brave son of a life-saving mother. Evan asked whether I had chosen a month for surgery, then insisted he was only trying to plan dialysis around it. I answered everyone with the same sentence. I am not an approved or confirmed donor, and no surgery is planned. Some people apologized. Others told me they would pray for my courage. The worst part happened the following Saturday. My parents had asked to take Caleb to a science museum. I nearly refused, but he loved space exhibits, and I did not want the conflict to cost him every relationship at once. I told my mother there would be no discussion of Evan's transplant with him. She said, "Of course not, he is 8. When Caleb came home, he carried his backpack upstairs without asking for a snack. 20 minutes later, I found him placing socks and his favorite gray sweatshirt inside it. "Are you going somewhere?" I asked. He froze. "Grandma said I might stay with her when you have the operation. She said we should make it easy for you." I sat on the edge of his bed. "There is no operation." His face crumpled with confusion. "But she said you were going to save Uncle Evan." "Grandma said something before she knew my decision." "Will he die if you say no?" No parent should have to answer that question because another adult placed it inside a child's mind. I chose every word carefully. Uncle Evan is sick. His doctors are treating him, and there are different ways people receive kidneys. My body is not the only plan keeping him alive. Caleb stared at his packed sweatshirt. "Grandma said being scared doesn't mean you get to let somebody die. Is that what I'm doing when I'm scared?" I pulled him against me. No, you are not responsible for any adult's medical care, and neither you nor Grandma gets to decide what happens to my body. That decision belongs to me and my doctors." He cried quietly into my shoulder. I held him until his breathing slowed. Then we unpacked the bag together. I called my mother after he went asleep. "You told Caleb I was having surgery." I told him what recovery might look like, so he would not be frightened. He packed a bag. That shows he is trying to be helpful. He asked whether his fear could kill Evan. There was a pause. Children sometimes express things dramatically. "You will not see him without me again." Her voice changed. "Do not use my grandson to punish me." "I am protecting him from being used to punish me." "Lauren, listen to yourself. Your brother sits attached to a machine while you set rules about museum visits. And you used that fact to frighten an 8-year-old. This conversation is over." I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but my decision was not. Evan called the next morning. He did not ask about Caleb. "Mom says you cut her off. She told my son I was having surgery and that he would live with her during recovery." She gets ahead of herself. That is a gentle phrase for lying to a child. He exhaled. I could hear a dialysis machine in the background. "Can you just fill out the initial questionnaire? It is online. It doesn't commit you to surgery." Why would I begin a process while everyone is trying to remove my ability to choose? Because if you're not compatible, this all ends. You mean I get to say no only if a doctor says it for me? That isn't what I said. "Did you know Mom planned the announcement?" He went silent. "Evan, did you know before I entered that room? I knew she wanted to thank you publicly. For a kidney, I never promised. I thought once you saw the support, you might stop focusing on everything that could go wrong. You used your children. I did not tell them to run over to you. They were excited. Because you let them believe I had agreed." His voice hardened. "I am trying to stay alive, Lauren. I am sorry if I did not manage the announcement perfectly." I ended the call before anger could make me say something I could not take back. 10 minutes later, a message appeared from him. "I knew Mom was going to announce it. I thought once everyone applauded, you wouldn't back out. I should have warned you, but please understand how scared I am." I read it 3 times. There it was, not an accusation I would have to prove, not my interpretation of his silence. His own admission that the applause had been designed to make retreat harder. I took screenshots showing his name, the date, and the messages before and after it. I backed them up with the photographs, posts, and fundraiser description. Then I did something my family had demanded for weeks, but not in the way they expected. I called the transplant hospital. I did not call to volunteer. I asked to speak with someone from the living donor team. The first coordinator listened without interrupting, then connected me with an independent living donor advocate named Helen Ward. I took the call in my parked car outside a middle school construction site. Rain clicked against the windshield. Workers in reflective vests moved behind orange fencing while I explained the banner, the public announcement, Diane's posts, Evan's message, my employer's email, and what Caleb had been told. Helen asked, "Have you submitted any donor questionnaire through our program?" I told her no. "Have you verbally told anyone on the transplant team that you wish to be evaluated?" Again, I said no. "Then you are not Evan's donor, confirmed or otherwise. You have not entered evaluation." I closed my eyes. Hearing a professional state, the obvious loosened something in my chest. She explained that living donation required informed, voluntary consent free from coercion. A potential donor could stop an evaluation, and the team would protect private medical information. My reasons would not be handed to my brother or parents. "Families sometimes believe compatibility creates an obligation," Helen said. "It does not. Even a medically suitable person may decide not to proceed. They want me to be tested so a doctor can reject me. They do not accept that I can reject the process." Then I want to ask you one question. If nobody in your family ever learned your answer, would you want to begin this evaluation now? I looked through the windshield at the half-built school. My job required me to estimate risk before anyone signed a contract. I would never tell a client to approve a project because the people in a room had applauded. Yet my family expected me to make a permanent medical decision under exactly that pressure. No, I said, not under these conditions. That is a complete answer. I told her the fundraiser claimed an upcoming transplant was planned. She asked me to send the public link and screenshots to the transplant program's patient liaison. She was careful not to threaten Evan's care. His medical treatment and transplant candidacy were separate from my decision. But she said the team needed to know if inaccurate claims were being made in connection with its program. A potential donor is not a donor, Helen told me before we ended. And right now, you are not even a potential donor. You are a person whose family announced ownership of a decision. That sentence stayed with me. I did not ask the hospital to invent a medical reason. I did not want my parents telling people I would have donated if my blood pressure or lab work had been different. No test had rejected me. I had decided not to begin while my family treated consent as something they could manufacture through shame. The next discovery came from the woman who had organized the fundraiser. Her name was Brenda Cole, and she worked with my mother on church events. I called her and asked who had written the online description. "Your mother sent the family details," she said. "I cleaned up the wording." "Did she tell you I was a confirmed donor?" Brenda hesitated. She said the family had a living donor and expected surgery after testing. "I never agreed to testing." Silence filled the line. I sent her my public correction, which Diane had deleted, and a screenshot of the caption calling me confirmed. I did not send Evan's private message yet. I asked for the fundraiser's current total and whether money had been withdrawn. The campaign had collected $25,840 online, plus several hundred in cash. Most of it was legitimately intended for dialysis-related expenses, lost wages, transportation, and childcare. But the description said donations would help prepare the family for an upcoming living donor transplant. Brenda sounded sick. We raised money for legitimate dialysis costs. We did not authorize anyone to advertise a confirmed donor who does not exist. I am not asking you to take treatment money from Evan's children. I am asking you to correct the false claim. I need to speak to the committee and the platform. Please do. I would rather this be corrected quietly. But if my name stays there, I will report it myself. That evening, I printed everything. The photograph of the banner, Diane's caption, my deleted correction, the fundraiser language, the email that reached my employer, Evan's admission. I placed the pages in chronological order. The paper did not make me powerful in some theatrical way. It did something more useful. It kept my family from changing the story each time the truth became inconvenient. 2 days later, my father called and invited me to Sunday dinner. "Your mother wants everyone to speak calmly," he said. "Who is everyone?" "Just family. Patris, your Uncle James, Rachel, Evan, people who care about both of you." "Why are Aunt Patris and Uncle James needed for a private medical decision?" "Because this has divided the family and you trust them." I did trust them more than my parents. That was precisely why they had been invited. Their presence would make the pressure feel like concern. "What do you expect from me at dinner?" I asked. "We want a date for the initial testing. After that, facts can replace emotion." "You already announced a result before any facts existed. Then come correct the confusion." I agreed, not because I planned to announce a testing date, but because witnesses were finally useful to me, too. Before dinner, Brenda forwarded a draft correction for the fundraiser page. It stated that no living donor had been confirmed or evaluated, that no transplant date existed, and that contributions were intended for Evan's verified dialysis-related expenses. She also said the platform could temporarily freeze withdrawals while the wording was reviewed and donors were notified. I printed 2 copies. Sunday dinner looked like every Mercer family gathering I had attended since childhood. My mother used the blue-rimmed plates. My father carved roast beef. Aunt Patris had brought green beans, and Rachel sat beside Evan with one hand resting near his wrist as if she were monitoring his pulse. Sophie and Miles were watching a movie downstairs. Caleb stayed with my friend Tessa. My parents had not seen him since the museum, and I was not bringing him into another room built to pressure me. There was one thing on the table that did not belong with the serving dishes. A printed calendar sat beside my plate. Across the top, my father had typed LAUREN recovery plan. I lifted the first page. They had assigned Rachel and my mother to alternate school pickups for Caleb. Aunt Patris was scheduled to bring meals. My father had estimated 4 weeks before I could return to desk work. There was even a note suggesting I temporarily transfer the school renovation bid to a colleague. "What is this?" I asked. Robert put down the carving knife. "We removed every practical excuse, so now all that is left is for you to choose your brother." Rachel looked at him sharply. "You made this without speaking to Lauren's doctor." "It is a working plan," Diane said. "Nobody expects every detail to remain exact." I turned to Rachel. "Did you know they were making it?" She said no, and Evan looked down at his plate. My mother folded her hands. "We are not here to argue about a calendar. We are here because this family cannot live inside uncertainty. Lauren, please tell everyone when you will complete the questionnaire." Aunt Patris spoke gently. "Maybe we should let her explain where she is." "We know where she is," Diane replied. "She is frightened, which is understandable. But fear cannot be the only voice in a family emergency." I reached into my bag and placed the photograph of the fundraiser banner on the table. "This was not encouragement," I said. "It was a false public statement." My father leaned back. "We have covered this." "No, you have changed the wording each time I objected. First, Mom said I had made the choice. Then Evan said the banner only meant I might be tested. Then you told people I was confirmed. So tonight, we are going to use the record." I laid Diane's post beside the photograph. Then, I placed the fundraiser description beside that. "I am not Evan's donor. I never volunteered. I was never tested. I have not entered an evaluation, and the transplant center knows I was publicly pressured." The only sound was the hum of my parents' refrigerator. Diane's face went pale, then rigid. "You contacted his hospital to complain about us." "I contacted the living donor team about coercion directed at me. Evan's treatment is separate. Nobody is interfering with his dialysis or his place in the transplant process." "You used the word coercion about your own mother. You announced ownership of my kidney to a room full of people." Robert pointed at the papers. "This is an elaborate way to abandon your brother." "No, this is an accurate way to correct you." Evan finally raised his head. "Lauren, you made your point. Can we discuss testing privately?" "You already made it public." I placed the screenshot of his message in the center of the table. "You told me you only knew Mom wanted to thank me. This is what you wrote afterward." I read his words aloud. "I knew Mom was going to announce it. I thought once everyone applauded, you wouldn't back out." Rachel turned toward him slowly. "You knew." Evan rubbed both hands over his face. I was scared. "That is not what I asked. Did you know Lauren had never agreed?" She had not said no then. I felt the old family logic settle into the room. My consent was not required. Only the absence of a refusal they respected. Rachel's voice remained quiet. "Did you tell Sophie and Miles that Aunt Lauren was going to save you?" I said she might be able to. They ran to her in front of cameras because they thought it was decided. Mom handled the announcement. Rachel pushed back her chair. "Dialysis explains why you were afraid. It does not explain why you taught our children that Aunt Lauren's body belonged to them." Evan looked at her. "Where are you going?" "I'm taking the kids home." "Rachel, please don't make this worse." She removed the paper name badges Sophie and Miles had worn at the fundraiser from her purse. I had not known she carried them. She placed them beside Evan's plate and walked downstairs to collect the children. My mother stood. "This is exactly what I feared. Lauren has turned one difficult decision into an attack on Evan's marriage. I did not write his message, I said. I only stopped hiding it. Aunt Patris picked up the fundraiser printout. Diane, did donors believe surgery was planned? They believed what all of us believed, that Lauren would help her brother. Helping is not the same as donating an organ. My mother looked betrayed by the distinction. I slid Brenda's correction across the table. The fundraiser collected nearly $26,000. The organizer has been told there is no confirmed donor. Withdrawals may be frozen temporarily while the page is corrected, and donors are offered accurate information. Robert's chair scraped against the floor. You endangered money his children need. The legitimate dialysis expenses remain legitimate. Most donors may leave their contributions in place, but you cannot collect money using a transplant plan that does not exist. People will think we lied about Evan being sick, Diane said. Then tell them the exact truth. Evan is seriously ill. He is on dialysis. He needs financial support. No living donor has been confirmed. I placed the second copy of the correction beside her plate. You have 48 hours to remove every claim that I am his donor and notify the organizer that you approve the correction. If you refuse, I will send the platform the banner, the posts, my deleted correction, and Evan's admission myself. My father stared at me as if I had become a stranger. You planned this dinner. No, you planned a dinner to pressure me into naming a testing date. I came prepared to answer accurately. Evan was still staring at the badges beside his plate. So that's it. You will not even find out whether you match. I looked at the brother I had driven home from dialysis, the boy whose failed business had consumed my college fund, and the man who had used his children's relief to corner me. I will not begin an evaluation while this family treats my consent as an obstacle to overcome. That means no. I held his gaze. It means no. He closed his eyes. I did not feel victorious. His illness was real. His fear was real. My refusal did not cure either one, but love did not require me to call coercion devotion simply because the person benefiting was sick. I gathered my copies and left the correction on the table. Brenda updated the fundraiser the next afternoon. The platform temporarily paused withdrawals while it reviewed the change. Every donor received a notice explaining that no living donor had been confirmed, tested, or scheduled for surgery. Anyone who had contributed based on that misunderstanding could request a refund. Most people allowed their donations to remain. Evan still had dialysis costs, missed wages, medication expenses, and 2 children. The final corrected total stayed above $24,000. That mattered to me. I had never wanted to punish his children or pretend his medical crisis was false. I wanted one false sentence removed, that my body had already been promised. When I refreshed the fundraiser page and saw my name disappear, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The corrected description was less inspiring than my mother's version. It was also true. The community reaction was quieter than Diane had feared and more painful than she expected. Some relatives apologized to me. Others avoided the subject. Aunt Patris told my mother that she would help Evan with transportation, but would not participate in pressuring me. The church committee asked Diane to step away from organizing medical fundraisers for the rest of the year. My mother left me a voicemail after that decision. People are looking at us as if we lied about Evan being sick, she said. I hope you are satisfied with what your need to be technically correct has done. I saved the message, but I did not answer it. There was no arrangement of words that would make her understand the difference between lying about an illness and lying about another person's consent. My father sent one text, "Your mother cannot sleep." I replied. Caleb could not sleep after she told him I might let Evan die. He did not respond. I stopped managing Evan's appointments and bills. I sent Rachel the spreadsheet and explained every open issue. I did not volunteer for school pickups or dialysis transportation. When Sophie had a birthday, I sent her the astronomy kit she had wanted. When Miles performed in a school play, I attended and sat 3 rows behind Rachel. I loved them without allowing their needs to become another path back to control. Rachel and Evan separated temporarily. She took the children to her sister's home for several weeks, not because he was sick, but because he had involved them in something she believed should never have touched them. They began counseling. I learned this from Rachel, not my parents. Rachel came to my townhouse one evening to collect the children's overnight bags they had left in my hall closet. She stood in the doorway holding 2 empty duffel bags and looked more exhausted than angry. "I need to apologize," she said. "At the fundraiser, I knew Diane planned to thank you for considering testing. I did not know she was announcing a donation. When I saw the banner, I thought you and Evan had spoken privately." He let everyone think that. "Including me?" She looked toward the stairs, where Caleb was sleeping. "Sophie asked whether you changed your mind because she hugged you too hard. Miles thinks Daddy is angry with him for telling people. They are trying to find the moment when they caused this." I understood immediately. Caleb had done the same thing. Children assumed that if adults were hurt, there must have been one action they could undo. "Tell them they did nothing wrong," I said. "They were given something false and reacted with love. The adults were responsible for what they believed." Rachel pressed her lips together. "Evan says he never asked them to pressure you. He did not need to give them instructions. He only needed to put them in front of me, believing their father would live because of my answer." She nodded. "That is what I told him." I gave her the bags and offered to let Sophie and Miles call me whenever they wanted. I also told her I could no longer be the automatic solution for childcare or appointments. She understood. For once, no was allowed to remain a complete response. Evan remained on dialysis. His transplant team continued evaluating legitimate options. He stayed on the deceased donor waiting list, and 2 people who voluntarily expressed interest received information from the hospital. I never asked whether either began testing. Their medical decisions were private, just as mine should have been. Caleb saw my parents only when I was present. The first few visits were awkward. Diane tried to tell him that adults sometimes misunderstand one another. I stopped her and said, "You told him something untrue. You may apologize without asking him to reinterpret it." She managed a stiff apology. Caleb accepted it, then asked if they could play a board game. Children sometimes move forward more cleanly than adults because they do not need the past rewritten first. 4 months after the dinner, Evan sent me a message asking to meet at a cafe near my office. He wrote that he would not mention testing, donation, or money. I waited a day before agreeing. He was already seated when I arrived. He had lost weight. The skin beneath his eyes looked gray, but his posture was steadier than it had been during the worst weeks. A cup of tea sat untouched in front of him. I took the chair across from him. "How are you?" "Still on dialysis. Better at pretending I enjoy renal diet food." It was the kind of dry joke he used to make before fear consumed every conversation. I almost s. Mild. He reached into his jacket and placed a key on the table. It was the spare key to my townhouse. I had given it to him years earlier so he and Rachel could drop off the children when I watched them. "Rachel said I should have returned this months ago," he said. I looked at the key, but did not pick it up. "She came home," he continued. "We are trying. The kids are in counseling too. I'm glad they have someone to talk to." He nodded. "I owe you an apology that doesn't contain the word but." I waited for him to continue. "Dialysis scared me. It still scares me. Every session feels like time I have borrowed from a machine, and I started looking at every person around me as an answer or an obstacle." He swallowed. "Mom said you would come around if the decision felt real. I knew the banner was being made. I knew what she planned to say." "You let your children believe it," he nodded. "Yes, I did." "You let Caleb believe it." His eyes dropped. I did not know what Mom said to him, but I created the story that allowed her to say it. For the first time, he was not dividing responsibility into smaller pieces, so none of them looked large enough to hold. "I kept telling myself you could say no," he said, "but I helped make sure saying no would cost you your whole family." The cafe door opened behind me, bringing in a gust of cold air. I remembered him at the fundraiser, smiling while he told me not to ruin the night. I remembered him in my passenger seat after dialysis, trusting me enough not to pretend. Both versions of him were real. An apology does not restore trust, I said. He answered quietly, I know. It does not give you the key back. I know that too. And I am not ready to act like this happened, because everyone loved too much. He nodded slowly. It happened because I was afraid and decided your choice mattered less than my fear. I picked up the key and closed my hand around it. That is the first honest thing you have said about it. We sat there for another 20 minutes. He told me about counseling. I told him Caleb had stopped asking whether adults expected me to save everyone. We did not make promises about holidays or return to the closeness we had before. Trust was not a kidney. It could not be transferred in one heroic act. It had to be rebuilt through smaller choices nobody applauded. I still bring a meal to Evan's house sometimes. I still send gifts to Sophie and Miles. If Rachel asks for help in a genuine emergency and I can give it, I decide freely. My parents no longer receive my private information simply because they call themselves family, and they do not make plans for Caleb without me. Evan needed a kidney. That truth deserved compassion. My family decided it meant I no longer needed a choice. That lie deserved resistance. Love may inspire sacrifice, but sacrifice extracted through humiliation is not love. Sometimes the most loving answer is not the one that saves everyone from fear. It is the one that refuses to teach the next generation that a person's body becomes family property whenever enough people need something from it. If your family announced a sacrifice in your name and called your refusal selfish, would you still feel free to choose? Tell me what you think. And before you go, tell me your name and the city you're watching from. I want to know where this story found you.